What does it mean when a superhero ages badly? I mean, superheroes really don't age, right? Unless we're counting like old men, Bats, Logan, Spidey. But no, that's not what we're talking about here. Instead, we are talking about the fact that over time, some superheroes have become less relevant due to being stuck in a certain time period. Or it could be framed as a villain now, maybe instead of a hero, as times have changed. Their powers might no longer seem as great, or their costume just might not seem as cool. These are heroes that now embarrass us more often than they make us want to celebrate them. They may have had controversial panels which greatly changed them. Today we'll be looking at some of the ways our perception can change about what makes someone a terrific superhero, as we count down the top 10 superheroes who aged badly. Alright, let's get counting. Number 10. Professor X. You might think of the fatherly image of Sir Patrick Stewart when it comes to Professor X, or the bright-eyed and inspired young James McAvoy when it comes to Charles. But over the years in the comics, Professor X's image has become so twisted that he's almost become a villain in the eyes of X-Men fans. But was Cyclops right? While Xavier did his best and had the best intentions, his treatment of the X-Men has been criticized. His use of the Danger Room, which he continued to use after discovering it was sentient, and his many secrets that he kept, have called his methods when it comes to saving the world and creating his team into question, especially when it comes to his image as a parental role model. Scott Summers himself, Charles's golden boy, even ended up turning on him. Granted, he was possessed by the Phoenix Force, and he kinda regretted killing him, but still, it seems like it wasn't unjustified. And honestly, the more we find out about Charles, the more shady he seems to appear. Even in the new relaunch of the X-Men, he's definitely up to something sneaky. Also, he stole Phantom X's body. Or maybe he didn't, maybe it was given to him. We don't know, it's a mystery. Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher himself hasn't aged poorly in terms of his looks, but living as we are in 2020, his glorification of war and violence could be viewed as, well, problematic. This has always been an ongoing debate for me in my mind in regards to how I feel about the Punisher. On one hand, his story is well written and it's tragic, but on the other, it also promotes the idea of taking violent revenge on those who have harmed you or your loved ones. An eye for an eye, as they say. Granted, we've also seen some updated versions of Frank Castle, for example, the tragic and completely insane alternate Cosmic Ghost Rider, which imagined Frank as the vengeful spirit who managed to survive beyond having really anyone to take revenge on, thus sort of highlighting some of the problems with the idea of vengeance itself. Also, this character is just great and hilarious, but it's also making some points too. Yet his iconic image as a superhero we were first introduced to continues to spark debate in regards to the commentary he implies regarding topics such as masculinity, violence, war, victims of PTSD in the military, and mental health. An eye for an eye, after all, leaves the whole world blind. Or at least leaves everybody with one eye, which, I don't know. We're not going to have any depth perception if we do that. Number 8. Manhunter. Manhunter is Kate Spencer. She is a lawyer and prosecutor working for the US government in regards to attempting to convict guilty criminals in court. When she feels that too many guilty criminals appear to be getting freed from their charges, she takes the law into her own hands and becomes Manhunter. She blackmails a weapons manufacturer and witness protection to help outfit her profession as a vigilante, helping to armor her and arm her. She kills those she deems guilty criminals and stands to represent some of the most problematic ideals surrounding what vigilantes really stand for. A lack of trust in the justice system with a penchant for fighting what they believe is right in a violent manner as opposed to fighting to make the system right again. Though granted, Spencer is also working in law, so obviously she has been trying to fix that system to some extent. But still, it's kind of like taking the law into your own hands on that level, killing people. It's a bit much. Number 7. Big Bertha. Bertha Crawford, who was originally Ashley Crawford, isn't really problematic on the surface, but as soon as you get into her power set, she quickly becomes a problem. Bertha has the power of body transformation. She can give herself excess bulk, granting her superhuman strength and durability, but she can also reduce herself to a small size. And when I say smaller, I don't mean shrinking down like Ant-Man, we're talking about dress size here. Reducing her mass can only be done through induced vomiting. Yeah, I think you know where I'm going with this one. Meaning the Big Bertha, who is also known as a supermodel by day and superhero by night originally, promotes bulimia. Although I will say that Bertha now often prefers her bulkier form, so you likely won't see her vomiting as often to become slimmer. Means that this problem becomes less addressed, but it still exists. not a great role model for people. Number 6. Alan Scott. Alan Scott was the first Green Lantern to appear in the comics in the 1940s. Because of the origins of his ring, he was granted great power, but with a pretty big limit on that. He couldn't do anything against wood. Yeah, any wooden weapons would handily defeat him. That's his huge weakness. This weakness remains one of the weirdest to date, even weirder than Hal and the Green Lantern's previous weakness to the color yellow. And it is for this reason that it is hard to take Scott seriously when it comes to his prowess as a lantern, as we look back from the modern age of superheroes. Can do anything against anything unless it's made of wood. Number 5. Hank Pym. While Hank Pym was first regarded as a brilliant mind when he originally appeared in comics, this brilliant genius, he eventually went on to become kind of one of the worst role models when it came to what it meant to being an Avenger and a superhero. Although even the Avengers have made some questionable decisions over the years, so really they're not always the ones to judge people. Ant-Man would eventually go on to develop a split personality and as a result become Yellow Jacket, as well as many other different personas that he would name. He would be expelled from the Avengers after he beat his wife Janet, whom he also kidnapped in order to propose to, by the way. Yeah, that whole story is pretty weird. He was the man responsible for Ultron in the comics. Janet would leave him and eventually he would in turn begin to seek the help that he needed, diagnosing himself with bipolar disorder, but not till 2013. Well, Ant-Man was actually originally introduced in 1962, so it took writers a long time to realize just how much this character seemed to need some help. And while Hank sought to rehabilitate himself in the comics and has been altered somewhat to make him less problematic of a character within the MCU, Hank became so problematic for Marvel's comic book world that he appeared to be killed off more than once, more recently in 2015 Avengers Rage of Ultron. Number 4. Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Okay, so while there are some good things to be said about Sheena, there are also some really big problems. She's one of the first female superheroes to ever appear, making her debut in the comic book adventure series Wags. She would also later go on to have her own series, and her backstory was explained in the 80s as being a young woman who was taken in by African tribes and raised to become the Queen of the Jungle, and kind of their savior. Yeah, which seems strange, especially when she ended up saving them from themselves in a sort of Hamlet-esque story where the king's brother ends up killing him so that he can become the king. Sheena and her American companion Vic Casey end up saving the day, and while Sheena also saves Vic, proving her strength and being this ultimately pretty badass lady, the cultural appropriation regarding Sheena's story has not aged well. Though for her being over 80, Sheena herself still looks pretty great, so that's a silver lining, I guess. Number 3. Pre-modern age Superman. Before Clark Kent came into the modern age of comics in the 80s, he was quite different. The original Superman was more powerful. He could wipe out foes with just a super sneeze, and had a slew of powers that came and went for convenience of story. We always think of Superman as being the good guy, but this version of Superman was sometimes sexist, and he was also just downright mean sometimes. He made Jimmy Olsen think that he hated him to spare him from becoming the victim of a deadly prophecy, when he could have just told him about the prophecy. Like, you didn't have to be mean to him, Superman. You didn't have to rip up his card that he made you. And he one time made Lois Lane cry by being cruel to her and making her think they were breaking up, simply to prove to a director that Lois could play a character based off of herself in a film about Superman's life. This version of Superman remains confusing and problematic for a number of reasons. He also didn't seem as bright as modern age Superman either. There's definitely some storylines where I'm like, couldn't you have figured this out? Shouldn't you have known? Oh well. Shouldn't you have seen right through Lex Luthor's disguise? I guess not. In today's world, pre-modern age Superman seems kind of broken. Just saying. Number 2. Eros. Also known as Star Fox, but I find when I say that people get confused and they think of, video game Star Fox. I don't think many realize just how villainous Eros' powers seemed when he was created. Star Fox is from Titan and is Thanos' heroic brother. He was even once an Avenger. While his power set is extensive and impressive, as he is a Titan-based Eternal, making him a powerful enough being to begin with, writers originally and sometimes still do tend to focus more on one specific power that he has. Star Fox also has the ability to manipulate the emotions of others. Using pheromones, he can make you fall in love with him, and pretty much do anything for him. He has used this to win the day by making villains simply let him and the Avengers sort of do whatever they need to do and just stand down. He has even tried to use his powers to calm down the Hulk, though that didn't quite work out for him. Because of how his abilities cause him to take away one's free will, he was eventually tried on Earth for sexual assault, but escaped this trial only to be spirited away to be the subject of a similar trial on Titan. Yeesh. Star Fox was also suspected at one point during the trial to be responsible for Thanos' love of death, which would have meant he was in a way responsible for the death of billions. So yeah, this whole thing's pretty problematic. Although I don't think he was guilty of that, so at least there's something. Number 1. Whitewash Jones. Oh dear. Oh dear. Just even when you say the name. Problematic. Marvel has their way of dealing with heroes who have aged badly. They're either going to kill you, phase you out, or they're gonna retcon you. Retconning is exactly what ended up happening with this young Allies member, who aged, well, pretty poorly in his original form. Washington Whitewash, or as he's nicknamed now, Wash Jones, was originally introduced as part of Bucky Barnes' Young Allies team in 1941. In the updated 70th anniversary special of the Young Allies comic, it was addressed that the original appearance of his character and that team was actually a fictional characterization within the Marvel universe that was used as propaganda, and not meant to be accurate. It wasn't meant to be accurate, they say. Obviously, Marvel wanted to retcon and distance themselves from his original appearance and characterization because it was very racist. I could talk about just how bad it was, but with comics, sometimes panels speak louder than words, and that is definitely the case with this character. All you need to do is look at how he was drawn, look at how he talks, and Marvel's reaction to understand just how terrible his original appearance was. It is aged badly, which is why they had to address it. Which I don't blame them for, but also so many bad things sometimes. Marvel, jeez. And DC, both of you. Shame. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. I hope you enjoyed this list. Who do you think has aged the worst in comics? What are some of the biggest superhero scandals that you think really need to be retconned, really need to be fixed? Whose costumes most need an update as well, on a lighter note? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest lists, Top 10 Newest Avengers. Galaxy Eyes Garchomp asks, wow Amanda, that outfit looks good on you. Is there an occasion that you're going to? Actually yes, I was on my way to see Birds of Prey. We had some early screenings here in Toronto and I felt like dressing up because I was so excited. I have no regrets about dressing up. Also, I'm obviously going again tonight in case you couldn't already guess. I freaking love dressing up for sick movies, just saying. Also, I love this Birds of Prey jacket, it's so cool. Reginald Andrews says, I can't wait for the DMCU to finally introduce Adam Brashear / Blue Marvel. That guy's incredible, he is pretty great. I feel like he actually deserves some more love from us for sure. I'm gonna try to mention him on some more lists and read some more of him. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and feelings shouted out in a future list. And while you're on your way down there, be sure to like, sub, and ring my bell. You know I love it when you do. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube.